First this morning, calls for an inquiry into the troubled Transmission Gully project. The Amalgamated Workers' Union wants an inquiry into PPPs, public-private partnerships, and their procurement process, suggesting there should be a single desk procurement agency in place. This follows concerns about its members' recent wait to get back to work on the 27-kilometre stretch of motorway north of Wellington, which is New Zealand's biggest ever PPP, and which has been troubled by cost blowouts, contractors leaving for Australia before lockdown, and an as-yet unclear completion date. Before the pandemic put a stop to work, Transmission Gully was expected to be completed in 5 months' time at a cost of $850 million. That bill has already blown out by $200 million from the original estimate. CPB Contractors is an 80% shareholder in the venture. Under the PPP agreement, CPB and HEB, which has the other 20%, are responsible for all operational decisions relating to construction, including materials and the size of the workforce, along with the Wellington Gateway Partnership, or WGP, which is a private group of financiers and contractors. 9 News has approached CPB for comment twice and been declined. Both NZTA and Transport Minister Phil Twyford also declined invitations to join this conversation, both saying it's not appropriate to comment while commercial negotiations are underway. But RNZ understands that NZTA has been talking with other local contracting firms about possibly stepping in should these negotiations fail. The Mayor of Porirua, Anita Baker, says her questions over the project have been met with a wall of silence, and various media reports have suggested that 2 contractors have fallen out and that CPB is trying to walk away from a multi-billion-dollar PPP roading project in Melbourne. AWU National Secretary Maurice said CPB shouldn't expect to get any more big projects here if it abandons Transmission Gully. Maurice joins me now. Kia ora, Maurice.
Kia ora, good morning.
What are the reasons behind the union's call for an inquiry?
I think when they launched the idea about public-private partnerships, it was sold on the basis that the taxpayer wouldn't be exposed. All the liability would lie between the partnership, basically privately, and that hasn't turned out to be true. At the end of the day, the taxpayers will foot the bill if anything goes wrong, and that's starting to happen now. So we're asking the question, is this the best model the way forward? And we've just seen some of the media releases coming through about where they've failed, and they seem to have failed globally. So that's the question we're putting to the minister about, all the ministers. Is this the best model for the taxpayers of New Zealand going forward on all these big projects? Because we've got plenty of projects in the pipeline, and we certainly don't want to revisit this again. So let's deal with it. We're also, in that inquiry, we want to actually have a look whether the procurement model that we do have within the government agencies or government departments, is that the best for New Zealand?
So the argument, Maurice, the argument here then is for a single desk procurement agency. Could you explain how that works differently to the situation we're currently in?
Well, currently at the moment you've got either the Ministry, we'll take 3, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, NZTA. They go out there and they go out and procure the jobs. But in some of those cases, they're actually regulators of their own industry. So to me, it's a potential conflict of interest, because at one part of it, you're trying to drive the price down, and the other part, you're the regulator to set a high standard, the highest standard. So while you're driving the price down with the contractors bidding and you're expecting the highest price, it's not working. I don't believe it's working, and if you have a look in the health sector with hospitals that are leaking, educational sector where leaky school buildings, the platforms and that they've been using, and of course in roading and that, where you can see with this job, and there's been a few other jobs. Unfortunately in New Zealand for quite a while, what we've noticed is it's nearly a sport where the agency is driving down the price hard, and contractors will go in there and secure the job with the expectation we'll get a variation to get more money out of it. Whereas if you pay fairly to the contractor, you'll get what you paid for, hopefully, a good job. But if you're driving it down to a point where there's no skin in it's so thin, the margin's so thin, there's going to be problems. And I don't ever believe that Transmission Gully was below $1 billion. So I'd be really interested to see what NZTA's costing on that project was, the value of it before they went to tender.
You understand that the $880 million other tenders were higher. Do you believe that it was done solely on cost?
Well, that's what we've always been saying, that unfortunately in New Zealand, lowest tender wins. And when you've got an agency with a budget as big as NZTA, I don't actually think that works on for the betterment of the New Zealand taxpayer and the contractors. You've got to expect the contractors to make a few dollars out of any project they get in. But like I say, it's become, over the years we've been watching, it's nearly a sport it's become like a sport to drive the price down, and then everyone grabs it to get in there with the hope we'll do a variation and get more money out of whoever we're dealing with, whatever government department. And that model doesn't work, because you end up getting what you pay for. And if you've driven down the price so low, you get a low price, not very good bargain.
Ultimately, is it the taxpayer, do you think, who's going to end up at with the bill?
Well, if NZTA's already paid out $191 million and then another 14, then the taxpayers already started paying.
Tell me about your workers.
So they could say that this is a forward payment on the project, but the way we understand those triple Ps they didn't get paid till the end of the project.
Your frustrations. Sorry, Maurice. Let's look at who you think the responsibility lies with, because you've got those who tendered and their tender was accepted. You've got the NZTA, and I sense your frustration with that. It's well canvassed, the problems facing Transmission Gully. Who do you think has to take the most responsibility then for the situation that we're in?
Well, at the end of the day, the owner of the project is NZTA. That's their project, and the contractors have come in there under the public-private partnership. They're meant to foot the bill, and this happened in 2014. And the project was meant to be completed, but we're nearly 6 years into the game, and we still haven't got clarity on when this project's going to finish. So the taxpayer ultimately will end up footing the bill, but it was meant to be the partnership where the private side of the whole thrust of the Triple P was the private sector took the liability on the project till it was completed, and then the public side paid it for the job completed, but that hasn't happened. We're already paying for it as we go along. Now, they can say that's a forward payment if that's the case, but essentially the way we understand the model was you didn't get paid till it's finished. And there's a 20-plus year maintenance contract that goes on from the completion of the actual construction. There's a 20-year maintenance contract that goes on from that moment on. So there is still more money to be made out of that project into the future.
Maurice, tell me about your workers. Are they're back on the job now? And during lockdown, were they covered by the wage subsidy? What's their situation?
Yes. They were covered by the wage subsidy. They're back at work now. As far as we know, everyone's back on the job since we've gone to level 1. Everyone came back, and the contractual arrangements that we had with them would have kicked back in. So the subsidy they would be expected to get 100% because we've gone back to level 1. So they're back on the job, and they're grateful to be back on the job, to be honest. And we just hope CPB carries on and finishes the project. And the one thing I will say, when that road's finished, having been through it, it's going to be a fantastic road in terms of the drive, as long as they put the proper surface down. It'll be a scenic drive, but it's the cost of the road when it's finished. How expensive is that scenic drive?
So, what I'm hearing from you are concerns that CPB might walk away from this. That would be a very big step, wouldn't it?
It'd be a very big step for CPB. They're a global company. The parent company, CIMIC, is a global company. I sincerely hope that they don't, because the work that they've been doing in Auckland's been great. There's a little bit of a disconnection down there with Transmission Gully, because essentially when it started, it was run out of Australia, and this is not I'm not putting the boot into the Aussies, but it was run out of Australia on their project, and we had the New Zealand arm up here doing other projects up here. So it was very interesting, to say the least. Their supervisory staff, when we went down there, we were down there right at the beginning, where, there was essentially a lot of Australian supervisors on the project with a lot of project managers. Now, they do big projects in Australia, massive projects, but I think one thing they learned very quickly, when it rains in Wellington, and I say Wellington and Kapiti Coast, it takes 3 days to dry the ground out. I think that was one of their lessons. And then the soil, the nature of the soil and how it all worked. And then procurement. All those things worked against them. But I think that project was 18 months behind from the get-go, from the kick-off, and that was done in 2014. So that tells you a lot about that. Around about 18 months to get all their consents sorted out and get the project truly off the ground. So you would have thought the government of the day then would have stepped in with concerns and said, hey, you need to get going. What's going on here? Because it was a flagship. It was, it was promoted as this is the way for future for all projects. And I doubt whether most governments would look at triple Ps at the moment, including the one that put it in.
Do you have any completion date? Have you and the work has been told any completion date at this stage? No.
No. And we're unaware of it. And I suppose from our point of view, with guys working there, they're on the job trying to make money. But I think the general public would like to know when they can actually access that road, given that they won't deliver it on the dates that they've promised this year. So it'll be interesting to see what NZTA, if they're still in negotiations with the alliance, how that comes out. I will say this, though. Within that alliance, there are people in there that have got the capability to do that job. They might necessarily not sit with CPB, but there's certainly some talented people that I've run in over the years, one in particular that I believe could project manage that job to its conclusion, definitely. So there is talent in New Zealand that could do that job.
They just haven't been given the chance.
The job done.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. That's AWU National Secretary Maurice Davis.